Hi, I'm Zodwa Nyoni. I am a playwright, a poet, and screenwriter and director. Today I'm just going to specifically focus on being a playwright and talk about that job. So being a playwright usually means you have a whole bunch of ideas going on in your head and you are really kind of interested in seeing those ideas come to life on stage. So in terms of for me in that process, what I usually do is I spend time, if I want to get an idea, I spend time researching the idea. I spend time thinking about who are the characters in the idea and how do I bring them to life, and what is the question I'm trying to ask or answer within the play. When I have a sense of what that is, I then either get in touch with a literary associate or a dramaturg, and I ask them to help me develop this idea, and ask them if they feel it has legs, and how do I go about fleshing out or getting to the core of what the idea is. That's one way of getting ideas on on stage or moving them further. Another one is that sometimes I'm approached with commissions, and I'll be given either a theme or a topic to explore, and I'll be asked if I can find a story within that. So I spend a lot of time writing and researching ideas. I read other people's plays, I will watch plays just to get a sense of what is inspiring me and what can help me develop an idea. I also work teaching as well and helping other young writers develop their ideas, and I do that within university, and I also do that for theaters and other organizations. I'm just really fascinated by stories and just seeing and hearing them anywhere and everywhere I can. When I was in school, I was studying English literature, psychology, and sociology at A-level. And I think at that time I wasn't necessarily thinking that I wanted to have an arts career. But what I was doing outside of school was taking part in loads of community and arts events, and specifically through an organization called Leading Authors. And they introduced me to spoken word and performance, and I'd never really thought of myself as a performer. And I think the 5+ years that I spent with Leading Authors taught me a lot about myself and the things that I was interested in, and taking everything that I was learning with Leading Authors and plus the A-levels, I then thought, well, I can see how the arts can begin to unpack society. So I went in to study a BTech course in performing arts. I then also did a foundation degree in theatre studies. The back end of that theatre studies degree course, I was okay, I don't think I'm an actor specifically, but I like performance. So I then went on to go do an undergraduate in art, event, and performance, and that specifically was about creating a live artist and being a performance artist. And I loved that, and I made my first solo show whilst doing that, and that show went on to showcase at the National Gallery in Zimbabwe. It was just this wonderful experience. But then I was thinking more about myself in the future, and who did I want to be as a performer. And I realized actually what I still had at the core was this fascination with text, and where I didn't always want to be the performer, I always wanted to create text no matter what. So I then made this decision to then go do a postgraduate at the University of Leeds in writing for performance and publication. And there I just got to spend the time exploring the creation of text for theater, for radio, for television, for film, for publication. So we did novels and stuff, and we did short stories, and I was just really fascinated in story. And for me, I think being able to go into education and study creative writing was a great think for myself, because it kind of gave me like that structure over the course of like those years that I was studying. But I've also kind of been in, you know, in workshops outside of education where I've met, you know, artists and like facilitators and dramaturgs and directors, and like they're also kind of giving their time and learning. So I think learning can happen in kind of so many different ways. You just have to find like what is like the right space that kind of speaks to you, and can help you kind of get to the path that you're trying to get to. There's many. The discipline. I think discipline is really, really important in kind of building a routine, because I have to figure out like ways of kind of carving out time that enable me to kind of meet like deadlines. So let's say kind of within the day, I have to break it down like within the day, break it down within the week, within the month or months, leading up to like, you know, the submission of something. But I've had to kind of learn how I work best, and also had to learn that sometimes you will sit down and nothing will come. So if you are productive for, you know, kind of 20 minutes, be productive kind of 20 minutes at a time, and then give yourself a break, and then kind of go back to it. You know, staring at a blank screen all the time is not going to kind of always make you productive. I think I've had to genuinely be confident in my voice as a writer, and like my point of view, you know, be kind of everything that kind of makes who I am as in terms of kind of my identity, like my my African identity, you know, being a woman, being kind of an immigrant, seeing kind of through my eyes. I have to be confident in that. I have to keep a hold of that, because that's what's building like my voice, you know. Resilience. Resilience is important, because you won't get, you know, you won't be winning all the time like straight out the gate. You know, it takes time, I think, kind of certainly kind of in this industry. But what you have to do is be certain about the stories that you're trying to tell, and be committed to them over time, because it could be anything, you know, from like a few weeks to like years before something kind of sees the light. But do you see the kind of the value like of that story that you're really trying to tell? I get to tell stories. Like, I am so fascinated by stories. I'm fascinated by how they make people feel, you know, and I love kind of creating that emotional journey. Like, when I'm on my own, like as a writer, like there's the thrill of like the dialogue that the characters say. There's the thrill of like building the world. For me, there's like the thrill of the research. I love that. As like the kind of the industry, like as a whole, I love being able to collaborate with other artists. Like, I am so clear about like my role as a writer, that I get so fascinated by meeting a great director and like how they kind of want to interpret like the stories that I've written. When you meet actors who bring these characters like into life, and instead like these kind of three-dimensional things and happening in front of you. When you meet a set designer who kind of builds like the world of your play, and then there's the lighting, and then there's the sound, and then everything kind of comes together. Like when this team gets together and starts telling stories, like that is the best thing for me, and like the thing that I love the most about my job. My first kind of big full-length show was called Boy Boy Is Dead, and I remember kind of the time that it took to kind of get that show off the ground. And I learned so much about theater, about storytelling, and about, you know, kind of the different processes that you kind of go through with a draft, you know, and how the characters like will evolve. Like that play was learning. Like, it was everything I needed to kind of learn about making theater. And I remember kind of when it was on, like that first kind of press night, just like crying, because I was like, I can't believe like we're actually here. Like, I can't believe this thing that's also existed like in my head for so long is now in front of us, and people are getting to see it. Like, this is how you tell stories. This is how like you collaborate, and it was exciting. And I was also kind of working with a director that like I had admired for so long, like even as an actor, Lucien Msamati. Like, it was just kind of an honor to really kind of see like how he worked with with the actors, and like how he kind of brought like the world of like Boy to the stage. And I've met like so many people who are still like friends, you know, a good 6 years later. Like they're still family, because like that was like my first show, and they kind of helped me through the whole process. There are different setbacks and kind of challenges that you kind of face, like in this career. As a writer, you will, you know, come across times where you feel so unsure of the story that you're trying to tell, so unsure of like yourself, and like you'll be scared about like the validity like of your voice. You'll definitely like come across like imposter syndrome in like in so many different ways, you know. And you'll have to figure out like who are the people who will support you through that, you know, be it like other artists who are kind of experiencing it as themselves. Is it like, you know, other dramaturgs who can come on board and kind of help you like find like the pathway like through your story, through the things that you're kind of like creatively like blocked on. These things will happen, you know, and it's a constant job, you know, kind of working through this, because it doesn't just happen like once and you're done. It'll come up with like every different project, like it'll all bring in like its own anxieties. So it becomes so important for you to like build like your support system. And then like depending on your identity, like you will face like different discriminations. It happens, you know, whether or not it's about looking at gatekeepers and like who considers work worthy to be programmed, you know, how do people, you know, market your work if you're from a particular kind of culture or kind of demographic. How is, you know, your work spoken of like by reviewers and critics? Do they have like such a narrow field of like reference in how they talk about your work? Is your work like pigeonholed, you know? Do, you know, kind of people who are supporting like the creation of like your work, do they themselves, like let's say for example kind of dramaturgs, do they have like a wider kind of cultural reference? Are they willing to also go learn and kind of discover more outside of like themselves, you know? And you have to kind of find from your support group, but also kind of within yourself, like how to advocate for yourself and speak up for yourself. And that's really hard to do when you are a new writer, you know? So if you're able to kind of build like this tribe around you who will support you because like they've also kind of been through that before, or if together you can kind of like fight a cause, you know, then I think it's so important for you to build that, because they're the people who will be there for you, you know, through thick and thin. And like my kind of creative like family, they've all been those kind of things for me, you know, and helped me to figure out like how do I have certain conversations, how do I kind of address certain kind of issues. But everything about kind of being like in the kind of creative space for me has been a joy, and like I wouldn't trade that. Like I love writing, and even when I don't want to write, you know, I can't help but to always be creating stories like in my head, you know. So they are kind of constant challenges, but I have kind of like amassed this massive wonderful tribe of people who I think will always like fight for me and fight for my work. I would tell my younger self, don't be so hard on yourself, you know. More times than anything, your kind of gut instinct was right. You have to kind of learn how to kind of trust in your voice and trust like in your purpose, like as a creative. And in the moments that you kind of do face challenges, you still have like this burning desire to create, and you have to like hold on to like that fire above all else, because that's what kind of gets you through like all of like the challenges and like all of like the setbacks and like all of like the doubt. You are so deeply in love with story, and that's what you need to kind of hold on to. and the days that you don't think it's going to work out, like it's working itself out. And you are certainly a lot more resilient than what you thought you were at that time.